Now, just want to tell you, I'm going to turn it over to Ken and Jeff in just a second to get started, but I want to tell you a little bit about them. Ken is the president and the CEO of the Atlanta-based Alignment at Work. He is the inventor of pull thinking methodology and the author of the book Pull Thinking, Harness the Power of Pull to Fuel Growth and Ignite Performance by Aligning People, Culture, and Purpose. Ken has earned his BS degree in industrial engineering from Purdue University, and he spent the last 30 years as a consultant, coach, and author applying the pull thinking methodology. Jeff LeBeau is the co-founder and principal consultant for Alignment at Work, and he is a major contributor to Pull Thinking reference book. He serves as the lead trainer and coach and brings over 25 years experience in consulting, executive coaching, and manufacturing facilities planning. Ken and Jeff's clients include the Atlanta Community Food Bank, numerous center of CDC organizations, the Atlanta City Council, INPO, which is the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, the Hearst Corporation, Blimpie, Metron International, Leadership Strategies, and U.S. Pipe. Jeff has led over 250 workshops in pull thinking and other topics and holds a BSc and an MSc in Industrial and Operations Engineering from the University of Michigan. So now we're going to go ahead and get into it. I'm going to turn it over to Ken and Jeff. We're going to tag team this presentation today and deliver you all the information you need to know to create alignment in your organization. Go ahead, Jeff and Ken.
Thanks, Patty. What a great introduction. I appreciate that. Gosh, Jeff, it's been a long time we've been working on this, and we're really enjoyed that you all are here to help learn what we've been learning ourselves over the past years, and we continue to learn from everybody that we teach this. So today we're going to, like Patty said, tag team this, and we're going to learn about pull thinking, which gives us organizational alignment, and we'll be going back and forth with some questions, as Patty said, and I'll be going in and out with Jeff. So Jeff, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. Appreciate your time, and we want to make it as valuable as possible for you. Patty, thanks to you and the team at Leadership Strategies. They're great folks to partner with. Well, let's get right into it. First thing, let's see who we've got in the room. It looks like we have about 140 people. So I'd like to launch a poll, and if you could fill out the question here. We're asking what your role is in the organization, and we see the voting. We're up to 20% voting already. You guys are quick. We'll share the results with you in just a minute. Let's keep it open about 5 more seconds, and then we'll see how we turned out. 3, 2, 1, here we go. So it looks like we've got 9% senior executives, and a large number of people are managers, team leaders, directors, and kind of an equal split of facilitators. Perfect audience for today. Success for today. I'd like to make the case for why you need alignment, followed by defining it, how to create it, as well as how to see alignment. And that's why the glasses, you'll see them appear many times. So let's start out with thanks to Monty Python, and here we go. We've got a race for people with no sense of direction. On your mark. Get set. Go! Here they go. They're off. Okay. That's not really our idea of alignment, but unfortunately that's what happens in a lot of organizations. So let's look at a little bit more why you might need alignment and what it can do for you. Now we're also going to ask you to use the question part of the technology here, and with Patty's help, we'd like to collect some of your answers and feed that back. So first thing, what is alignment in your words? What does it mean to you when you hear that term come up? And if you'll go ahead and just type into the question box, and Patty will help us on this part.
Yeah, we have all the cats running in the same direction. That's from Carol, or Kayla, staying on the same page. When balancing act, All staff are aiming for the same goal, on track, working towards common objectives across the organization, philosophy and services to be delivered, common focus systems and priorities to the organizational purpose. We've got a lot of different ones.
We do. So it seems like we've struck a nerve here. Well, here's what comes to mind as we've collected this over time. Many of the same things that we heard from all of you. So now let's go to the next question, which is, so how do you know when you're aligned? And if we can do the same thing, go for the questions, please. I'm very interested to hear your answers on that one.
So how do you know you're aligned when there's no hidden agendas? You have agreement on the stakeholder? And everyone satisfied workers and customers and trust, people working together, when there's a synergy, when team members can describe the goal and purpose. Let's see, results are the same. I think that's about it.
Okay, very good. And all great answers, all true. Here's a question that we'd like to be able to answer for you. And here's some of the answers. So the real question that we'd like to help you be able to answer at the end of today is, how can you know actually before you start that you're aligned? We've got some tools that will show you just that. So here's an example of misalignment. You've got a bunch of people in the organization all attempting to align to the pull of their customer, trying to give service, but unfortunately they're going in about 18 million different directions. And that means that you've got managers there, and the sole purpose of the managers here is to shove service right through the system, just like a piston. And I don't know about you guys, but I sure am not a big fan of being a pistonee. I just really don't like that. And in a case like this, the customers may get a trickle of service, but we know it can be so much better. There are actually some pretty significant costs for misalignment. As we look here, integrity and trust. Can you imagine what it takes to earn that and what it takes to lose it? How about these rogues? Think of the folks at Enron and think of our friend on the far right. Big problem. What about bringing the wrong people in the organization? Does that ever happen to you? What does that cost? Or you get the right people, but you get them in the wrong job. It's really hard for them to be successful. And cost of quality. You think people ever make mistakes when there's misalignment? Big time. You sure do. And last, the cost of ambiguity. For those of you that are senior leaders, think of how much time you're spending each day answering questions for people that just don't seem to have the clarity that they need. And that just eats your time and not always fun for them either. So I'd like to think we've made the case for alignment. And now let's talk about how we define it and also how you can create it. Something we enjoy doing all the time. Now here's that same company still trying to satisfy the needs of their customer aligned to their pull, but notice that there are fewer people involved. Notice that they all have a much bigger capacity to serve. That's what happens when you get an organization aligned. People are empowered. And where are those managers? They don't need to be pistonizing because these folks are very capable of doing their own thing. They know what it takes to serve a customer, and the customers love it. That's what it looks like when everybody in the organization is pulling together. So how do you create alignment? Because it really sounds like a good thing. You've got a couple options here. You can push or you can pull. going to give you a hint. This is where we're coming from. Now I'd like to do a quick experiment. We like to use chains a lot as metaphors in our business. So here we have a chain, and I'm pushing the chain. And you get pretty much a big mess. Now I'm pulling the chain, and look, it aligns. Now for those of us that can't trust the technology, here's the instant replay. When I push the chain, basically we just got a great big mess. And we can push all those links forward, but I promise you, it's not pretty. Nobody likes being part of that. When we pulled the chain, look what happened. It aligned. Everybody worked together. Everybody went in the direction of the customer, all at the same time, naturally, easily. So what's different then between the push and pull and that distinction? We look at push, you think about all the different experiences you've had in organizations when you've been pushed. These are pretty common responses from our clients. It seems like the focus is on money, and people are constantly getting managed. There's a lot of pressure. We didn't put the word stress on here, but you know that it's going on. So let's contrast that with pull. So think about, as you guys described alignment just a few minutes ago, what it felt like to be in that situation. Certainly a whole lot more fun than push. People get really passionate, and the focus is on service, and there's a lot of leadership going on, helping to guide people and empower people. Well then, how would you pull alignment? This is our methodology for doing so, called pull thinking, invented by my partner Ken some 20 years ago. So what is pull thinking? It's a methodology to align everybody to the pull of their customers. And we're using customer in the broad sense, both internal customers and external as well. Pull thinking will help give you clarity of purpose, which is the antidote for ambiguity. And in the end, it's all about enabling ultimate service to customers, both within and external to your organization. Notice in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see that number in the blue field. Those relate to the slides on your handout. So I won't necessarily read all of these. But some basic parts about pull thinking is we really lead with service. That's the whole name of the game. You already saw what happened when we pulled the chain. And the name of the game is about getting clarity and agreement. That's what it's going to take for high performance and for alignment. And last, I'd like you to think of pull thinking as a platform that's totally compatible with everything that you already know. It won't contradict it, and it'll make it more powerful. Pull thinking has 3 tools. There's a principle, 4 questions, and a structure. We're going to show you all 3 of these today. It really is the whole body of knowledge. We'll spend more time on the questions and the structure than we will on the principle. But let's just jump in and look at the principle here. So we've got the 3 tools supporting and enhancing your business, and that's what's going to give you organizational alignment. Now, when you're using pull thinking, everybody will have a common language. You'll see in a few minutes how important that is. I'm sure that many of you are involved in strategic planning. Think about how many hours you've spent debating back and forth. Is this a strategy? Is it a tactic? Is it a goal? Where does it all fit? Is it an action plan? It really can get mind-boggling. And then you move from one organization to another and find out they have a totally different language for that. Pull thinking makes that much simpler. We're going to focus on flowing service, aligning the organizations and teams, and we're going to show you something that is only available here, an objective measurement for alignment and clarity. Clarity is a big thing that comes about when you use this methodology. And what that means is everybody in your organization knows their purpose. Like, what is their job? Why are they doing what they do? Who they serve? Who is their customer? Both internal and external. How about this? How they define success. Wouldn't that be great to know before you actually start your job? Know exactly what you're going for? And then how success is measured. Because if it's not measured, how will you get the feedback that you need to get better? Another important point, as you'll see a little bit later on, is how often that success is measured. That becomes very important for getting feedback. And furthermore, then, people get the clarity on what they are responsible for. So in looking back in your career, think about how many times you had this degree of clarity about what your roles and responsibilities were. I know in my career, that's been pretty rare. And lastly, since we're not all trying to do this alone, we all need support from others in the organization. Wouldn't it be nice to know who those folks are? And furthermore, wouldn't it be nice if they knew that they're there to support you? That helps. I'd like to briefly get into the principle. We cover this in much more detail in our seminar, but we just want to give you a quick taste of kind of the philosophical basis underlying the methodology, and then we'll focus on the practical tools. Well, it turns out this has been going on for quite some time. Our buddy Aristotle, one of our favorite quotes, talks about this idea of a prime mover that can move everything without itself moving, and it's really causing motion by being attractive rather than propulsive. Now that sounds a lot of words. A modern day version of that is a popcorn machine. Popcorn machine is there just doing its thing, but sending out that really nice aroma. And when you walk by the popcorn machine, what happens? It just draws you right in. You've got to have popcorn. That's what we mean by that attractive force, the power of pull.
Jeff, I don't know why Aristotle didn't say push or pull. He just said propulsive.
Yep. Well, we're going to talk about how push fits in here as well. So let's start with the principle, and it has three subparts we'll get into. But this idea, just like Aristotle said, that pull is the primary force that causes all movement. Pull is what makes it happen. So three parts. First, given that, is that push is a response to a pull. You think about it, when you've been pushed by somebody, it's not because they're trying to ruin your life or hurt you, but they're trying to get something done because they're being pulled to do it. And the tools that we're going to show you today will help you uncover what that pull is that's making everything happen, because it's often hidden. Just a quick example. I know at times I've had, in the past, had a boss come in my office, pound on my desk, and demand a report by 2 o'clock and storm out of the room. And I think to myself, wow, it just got pushed big time. Not only that, I'm not sure which report he wants. And I was going to leave early and go play golf. And now I got to stay here and get that report out? I'm not too happy about it. I have no idea why the boss did it, and it doesn't feel very good. Here's what it looks like with a pull. The boss comes in and goes, "Hey, Jeff, sorry to interrupt, I just got a call from our board of directors, and you know that staffing report you've been working on? Well, it turns out we've got to have that for our 2 o'clock meeting. They really need it. Can you help me out on that? Well, think about the difference in those two interactions. The first one just is terrible. All I know to do is get the report. In the second case, I understand why that request is being made. That little bit of extra information helps. And the other part is when you know the pull, I could also say to my boss there, oh yeah, I've got that report, and by the way, if the board's meeting, I think they're going to also want that financial projection report I'm working on. Can I help you with that? And that's how it works. And then a couple last things quickly is that pull is the most efficient way to operate. Just ask Toyota and any manufacturer. They've known this for years. And lastly, we're saying it's because that's how nature works. Now this is kind of the model that we work from. We encourage you to try it out for yourself. We found it to be very useful. Let's give one last look at the principle and move on. Now we'd like to cover the 4 pull questions, the second tool of pull thinking. Well, it turns out, and those of you who have your hand out, you already can see you're ahead, but there are 4 questions that define pull. And here they are. Number 1, what is the purpose? 2, the measures of success. 3, what's actually being measured. And 4, the frequency. We'll explore each of them in a little more detail. So here's pull question number 1. What is the purpose? And there are probably 10 million different names that actually mean purpose. We've got a list of a few here, a lot of different names. But when you see these, that's really what people are talking about. So we've got our vision, what outcome do we want, what goal are we going for? They're really talking about purpose. Why are we doing this? Question 2, what are the measures of success? And what we're really trying to do there is just finish out this sentence. So success for that purpose is ... Well, it turns out that there are many, many different words that mean measures of success, and it can be horribly confusing. If we use this term, we'll see here some of the different names that we use, that we've run into. But each one of these means measures of success. They're the description so that you can tell how you've done it on your purpose. Have you achieved your purpose? So you think of specifications, metrics, even values. Something like a spouse saying, I'm sorry, we don't do that in our family. That's a measure of success. Laws, budgets, schedules, the list could go on. But any of these kinds of words really describe success for a purpose, and we're going to call them measures of success as part of this simple common language. Now we've got question 3. What's actually being measured? Once again, there are many names for measurement. Here are just a few. So you think about it, each time you're producing a report, that is a measurement. A report card, just ask my kids about that one. A survey is a measurement, an audit, and so on. Now about this time, we're often asked, well, wait a minute, hold your horses. Now, question 2, what are the measures of success? And 3, actually being measured. What's the difference here? I'm confused. And if that's where you are right now, we're going to do our best to clear that up, because that is a very important question, and want to make sure everyone's clear on that before we move on. But to do this, we have to leave the webinar and teleport over to a law firm in downtown Atlanta. that we were working with, and I think this will help make the point. So the law firm, great bunch of people, really want to do great by their clients, and you ask them, so what are the measures of success for the work that you all do? Simple. We want our clients experiencing excellent service. And that's wonderful. Everybody would be for that. Now the fun part. What's actually being measured? And remember, these are attorneys. Let's see if you know what's going to come up right now. They were measuring billable hours. Seriously. And you look at that and say, folks, we've got apples and oranges here. That doesn't compute. In fact, it was the youngest guy in the practice group, and he thought he was going to lose his job by meekly raising his hand on that one. But he was absolutely right. And that got a great discussion going, all about service, all about what's important. And the head of the practice group said, okay, you know what? I want to be really clear on what we want for customer experience here. And I want our clients' service rating to be 95%. We really want to do a great job. Now, do you see how that's a good measure of success? Makes it very easy to know if you're achieving your purpose or not. But if that's what your measure of success is, then you're going to need to measure the percent rating of the client's service experience. And that way you end up with oranges to oranges. And that makes sense. Although I don't like oranges to oranges, let's make that apples to apples. It's really important that question 2 and question 3 are apples to apples.
Jeff, you wouldn't believe how many times we run into clients that's not the case. Value statements on the wall where nothing really is being measured about that. Many, many things, reports and so forth without and actually clear measures of success for the report.
Very confusing. Thanks on that one, Ken. So question 2 is words. Question 3 are really representing actions. So that's question 3. Let's move around the link. And question 4, the frequency of measurement. Now, all of you in business are quite clear about the different frequencies. Different businesses have their own rhythm. But we have our annual appraisals, our quarterly updates with the stock analysts, our monthly reports, daily. Every 5th visit, something gets measured. Or what about this one? Never. You never make the measurement. You never get the feedback. You really don't know what's going on. That's not good. It's pretty hard to improve when you're not getting feedback. But those are just different examples of what frequency of measurement means. So when you put all of those together, you end up with a solid link. Think of that chain back from the beginning. And the definition that we use for pull is agreement on the answers to these 4 pull questions. And the cool part about this, it's those same 4 questions, whether it's just 2 people talking, 2 teams working together, 2 departments, 2 divisions, 2 companies, 2 conglomerates, 2 countries. Ken won't let me say 2 planets, but I suspect. But it's always those same 4 questions that describe a service relationship between a service provider and a service recipient. Obviously, the answers are what's different each time. But very important is getting that agreement, asking the questions, getting the answers, and getting the agreement. And once you've done that, you've got pull and you've got alignment. If you're missing, however, what if you don't have an answer or you don't have agreement? We're denoting it like this. Guess what? You've got push. Now you're pushing that chain. Now you've got a weak link. Now you've got all the costs of misalignment, because that's really what push is all about. So side-by-side agreements create pull. Missing answers or agreement gives you push. Now it also turns out that I'm not very gifted as an artist, neither is Ken. So we represent these pull links and these push links just using 2 dimensions like that. We'll write the purpose in, answer to question 1. If it's a pull, we can represent it with a solid line. A push gets a dotted line. So far, so good. Patty, do we have any questions that that we need to address?
Well, we have a couple how we on time. We can go ahead and ask if you want. The example you gave regarding the law firm, shouldn't
Yes.
Q2 and Q3 be switched? The 95% satisfaction rate is what is being measured, and the survey of the client satisfaction rate is how and what is measured, and that's from Rosanna.
Got it. Thank you for asking that question. Very key. Question 2, we've defined what we want the measurement to be. If we can get a measurement of 95% on that survey, we'll know that we're doing great. We're achieving our purpose. But to get that information, we're going to have to go and collect the data, and the data that we need to know is the percent of that client experience. So question 2 tells you where you want to be. Question 3 tells you where to go to look for the feedback. You need to make the measurement and then compare the measurement to your measure of success.
And measure success is what we do before we start.
Yeah, good point, Ken. Don't know if everybody was able to catch that, but we can sit here today and define the measure of success. We can all know that in advance. So let's see if this next slide helps capture that. We like to think of questions 1 and 2 being words. We can say that. Our purpose is to do this. Success is, well, like today, our purpose is to conduct a webinar. Success is that we begin on time at 2 o'clock. There are also a number of dimensions beyond that, but for simple purposes, that's what it is. So that's our strategy, doing a webinar, and we want to start at 2 o'clock. Questions 3 and 4 represent our actions. Also, the execution of the strategy. I guarantee you we were looking at the clock at 2 o'clock, in fact, even before then, so we could ensure that we started on time. And every time we looked at the clock, that's question 4, we're making that measurement at a given frequency. So 1 and 2 are words, 3 and 4 are actions. And the 4 poll questions basically measure integrity. Wouldn't that be a nice thing if everybody could do that? Have their actions match their words? Do you think your customers would like that? Do you think your teammates would like that? It's a big thing. So let's just do a quick check. Make sure that we've got these definitions because we definitely want to have these solid before we go on. And Patty, could you verify if that got the answer that we were looking for about question 2 and 3?
I will, and also we have a couple more questions when you're ready.
Okay, let's do that right now.
Okay. This one's from Diana. How do you get leadership on board with all these 4 questions, and how do you review their performance to these objectives?
Yeah, good question. Patty, Diana, good question. One of the things that I learned early on that just the body of the tools we're showing you here today, I start there with the leadership. It's something they didn't know. And defining their particular role in terms of those 4 questions, of course they have multiple purposes, gives them the clarity that they may not have had before. That gets them on a safe environment, if you will. They may have not been doing that, Or in some cases, they have been doing that, and they're able to actually say that into words and sustain their good performance. But getting the executives and the leadership on that page and enable them to measure their performance is what these tools provide. And again, it provides a safe environment to do that. It's my experience has been it's kind of a strange conversation to sit down for lunch or coffee and talk about push and pull with one of the top executives. But it is very valuable in that it cuts through all the other things and all the other types of languages that may be going on in that person's head, enables us to get down to the bottom line here. How do you actually measure your service in the role that they're in? And it gives us that common language that we can speak differently and with more clarity. I hope that answers your question, Diana.
Okay, Patty, let's take the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. If you can get more, this is from Mary, if you can just provide a little bit more clarity. She doesn't understand who is doing the pulling. Is it management, the customer?
Well, actually, it's the customer, and everybody in the organization is a customer at some point. We all have customers we serve, like it's you and I having a conversation. At some point, I'm serving you and listening, and other points, you're serving me and listening. So it's that whole idea of customer supplier, if you want to call service provider and service receiver. A lot of people get the name customer confused, and they hear it, they're thinking about the external and not the internal. But really, it has to do with who you're serving, and we could call that a customer.
And that can also get very confusing, as Ken alluded to. The third tool of pull thinking helps clear that up.
Okay.
So let's take a couple more.
Yep, there's one more. This is from Alyssa. If you're doing a strategic plan, does or can success mean vision? Can you tee up the discussion that way?
Okay, Lisa. So in strategic planning, yes, the top pull really is your vision. It's not your vision of we want to be the most profitable company in our industry, but it's more like what are our customers experiencing as a result of the great service that we're providing. That really gets exciting and motivating and really gets people's juices going.
We're going to have an example of that coming up. That's a short case study here if you want to hold that thought.
Okay. And please make sure that we get that answered for you. So just a quick checkpoint, because this link in the chain of a pull is the basic building block that we're going to use again and again as we take it into an organization. So our definitions: pull is agreement on the answers to the 4 pull questions. Push, you're missing or you don't have the agreement. Missing the agreement or the answers. And remember the definitions of alignment and misalignment. Alignment is agreement, and misalignment is missing answers or agreement. Basically, alignment is pull, and misalignment is push. I'm hoping that that's pretty clear in everybody's minds as we take it going forward. Because you're going to need that tool to be able to see alignment.
Well, back on that push and pull, Jeff, remember we're talking about measuring something, and you're able to actually measure pull by that definition. You can measure it. You can say, if you don't have those answers or agreement, you've got some degree of a push or difficulty going on. So that's really the first measurement that we like to bring to organizations, and it's a huge influence on culture.
It's definitely a key measurement, and there's no black and white. You either got pull or you got push. No middle ground. So how can you use this to see alignment? You always want to look for that agreement on the answers. I think we're making the point here, but it really is that simple. There's a lot of information around. There's data that's out there. There are processes, there are procedures. There's a lot of agreement that's going on right now. It just may not have been formally documented. So in this example, we've got all 4 links, solid, we've got a pull, we've got alignment. And here, we're missing something. We're missing some answers, or we're missing agreement, which means we're misaligned. Bing, 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 bing. Misaligned.
Which is usually what we see in organizations. I call it pieces and parts.
Right. So how does this look in the real world? This is USA Today going back to October 09, almost 2 years ago. Check out this headline. What exactly would success in Afghanistan look like? It looks like poll question 2. Do you think there's agreement on the answer to this question? This is going on 10 years now. Are people clear on it? Think of the tremendous cost in loss of life, in money, in all kinds of different terms. And there's still not agreement on what success is. That's pretty scary. And yet, that happens all the time. So what does it look like when you answer the 4 poll questions, and how do we document that? Let's go to one of our favorite clients, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, wonderful organization that helps support people in need in so many different ways. This particular example, we're working with one of our clients, and one of her responsibilities is to help the poor people in her community qualify for different benefits like food stamps, or getting free income tax service, or getting assistance paying their utilities. But the challenge is those people have to be screened. Whoops, another measurement. They have to be assessed to see if they qualify. And you really need to go into the community to do that. So Sky, that's the name of our person here that we're working with, our client. So her purpose is to go out and actually set up screening sites that can move around. That's her purpose. How does she define success? Pretty straightforward. Success is there are 2 mobile screening sites added each month. Now you notice we're just going to go across and do 1 line, but in the real world, you could have 20 lines of different measures of success and measurements that describe success for that purpose. We're just showing 1 for learning. So she's looking at the number of mobile screening sites added per month. That's what she's going to measure to see how she's doing against her measure of success. And how often is she going to make that measurement? She reports that out once a month. And lastly, who's responsible for achieving that 2 mobile screening sites added per month? She is. She's got clarity about her job, about this purpose. But 2 last little pieces. She also needs to know who her customer is, and they also have to agree, because without agreement, it's push. And if she doesn't make an agreement with the right person, well, that doesn't count either. You need to know who your customer is, who you're serving, as well as who's going to support her, who's going to be her supplier. So back at the beginning when we talked about clarity, look at this. So Sky knows who she serves, what her purpose is. Question 2, how to define success. Question 3, what's measured. Question 4, how often that's being made, what she's responsible for, and who's going to help her. That's what we mean by clarity.
She also knows her customer and who helps her, right?
Exactly.
She gets that done. Good.
So in that case, what do you see? Looks like she's got pull going. And that's what the slides tell us. So there we are. That's what it looks like to use the lens of pull thinking to discover alignment and misalignment. And here she is. She's doing great at her workplace. She's actually displaying the measurements of her service. There are a number of them. We're just looking at one for the webinar today. Here's her graph. Her purpose: to secure mobile screening sites. You see on the left, she's measuring how many she adds per month.
And that, to that question about measure of success, you can see across here, there's the number 2, and each month she has success would be that she achieved 2. So the measure, what is she measuring? She's measuring the number of sites, and you can see it goes from 4 first 2 months, and it goes up to 6, and then down to 5 on the 4th month. So that's actually the measurement, is measuring the number of sites against the goalpost of 2, measure of success.
It's question 3 that tells her what data to go measure. And you see how question 2 and 3 are apples to apples. And Patty, any other questions at the moment?
Yeah, if you could just review the definition for push. There's a couple people that wanted to know that.
Okay. If for example, you looked at this chart and there were no bars at the 2 level, there would be no measure of success. Purple, I'm colorblind. Jeff reminds me. If there was no bars there on each month, 12 bars at 2, there would be no measure of success. But there are measurements. She's measuring the number per month. That would be a push because the bars are just there and she's hoping she's doing a good job. She doesn't know what success is. So push would be missing agreement or missing the actual measurement or the measure of success. And the frequency, it may be once a year, but really it needs to be once a month. And the lack of agreement would cause some difficulty or stress within actually getting that performance. I hope that answers it. It has to do with all 4 questions. We've got purpose there to secure mobile screen sites. We've got the measure of success with those 12 bars at 2. We've got the measurement. She's measuring the number added per month, and there's the actual measurement in that case. And we have a frequency, monthly.
So here's a more dramatic example, and maybe this will help drive that home. So what is the name of who asked that question, Patty?
Juanita.
Okay, Juanita. So imagine this. So you're in your car, and you're driving 45 miles an hour. Is that good or bad? Kind of hard to know. You're missing the measure of success. But now if I tell you you're in your driveway, is that good or bad? Yeah, that's pretty bad. That's because success for driving in a driveway is that you go no more than 5 miles an hour. But until you knew that, 45 miles an hour didn't mean anything. It wasn't useful information.
Great.
Anything else?
We have 2 people that work. Both examples that we've shown have been quantitative measurements. We have 2 people that work in a qualitative world. How would you apply this to a qualitative world? So it says, can you give an example that might use qualitative measurement? Also seems that you turn Q2 into a question to make the answer for Q3. Is that correct?
Right. Can you hold that? And we're going to go through an example here with just that. Okay.
Okay. Good. That answers 2 questions.
Yeah.
Go
But
ahead.
a very important question. The answer is yes.
It can be done.
It can be done. It needs to be done. In fact, as we've been working with Patty and her peers, we did exactly that. So our question back to you, have we got pull? Because if we do, the next step is we want to take that basic 4 questions, that basic module, and expand that to the organization. And to do that, we're going to need a structure, the 3rd tool. And a favorite artist of mine, love this quote, great things happen, you get a series of small things brought together. That's Vincent. So we all recognize this structure. This is an org chart. And an org chart basically tells you who's accountable to who. I wonder where the customer is, because I don't see the customer on here. But it's pretty easy to think that it's the vice president, but the vice president isn't the one who's buying the company's products and services. But still, this is important information. Now, how about this? This is a different kind of structure. It's a process flow. And in this case, it's going to show the sequence of activities to produce that final result. First you market, then you close your sale, and you deliver your services, and then the customer gets wonderful ultimate service. It's that sequence. And now we want to show you how pull thinking takes this approach. And remember, we talked about the importance of service. Now we're going to show you how you can model that flow of service. Here goes. Everybody is pointing at their customer. And a service flow answers the question, so how do we align to serve our customers? Which is, after all, our primary purpose. So marketing is there to serve that customer, to let them know what products and services you have available. The sales team, and Patty certainly knows this real well, the sales team is there to help reach agreement on the products and services the company will deliver. And lastly, deliver, that's where you're actually going to execute the contract and deliver the services as agreed upon. In each case, the customer is there in the red block. That's what a service flow gives you. Service flow also, in addition to showing you who the customers and suppliers are, the service flow is actually a visual model of your strategy. If you think about it, you're out to get something done. How are we going to work together to do it? What moving parts have to come together? What are all the pieces for us to accomplish our mission or vision, whichever you're going for? That's what a service flow models. So in contrast, the process flow is the sequence. The service flow shows that flow of service. A couple quick things. So you get the accountabilities, but the really important part about a service flow, it is otherwise invisible. It's not on an org chart. It's not on a process flow, but it shows how everybody works together. And unless you actually draw out a service flow, you won't see that. And in that sense, you help create misalignment because people aren't clear.
Ambiguity.
They get that ambiguity thing going. Mm-hmm. And these three structures, the org chart, the process flow, and the service flow, guess what? They all exist simultaneously. And that's okay. So what does it look like when you actually take all those different pull links and build them into an organization? Again, our client, the Atlanta Community Food Bank. In yellow, the primary customer of the food bank is people in need. Every other purpose that you see there are all in support of making that happen. Here's another organization. This one happens to be a professional group. It also has a vision, and that's pulling everything. Everybody's aligning to that. The different colors in this case represent the different major thrusts of the organization. But as you can see, each customer pull needs its own different structure. Form follows function. So how do you create the service flow? And we're going to need this because that's what's going to help us measure alignment. So first, you start with the pull of the customer. And next, you ask, how can we do that? How can we support them? And you're going to be adding different purposes. We can use the word links here, like links in a chain. Then you build it. How will I get that done? How will I do that? How will I do that? If you look at that, the second link down, their customer is the end user customer because the arrow's pointing up. If you ask how they're going to get that done, they're getting support from the person below them on the left and the person below them on the right. And lastly, we're going to ask how and why to make sure that each of these pieces are in the right place. And once again, the graphics trip us up and want you to think about these links that we're showing with arrows. Think of them as connected, like those links in a chain that we talked about so long ago.
So the arrows point in the direction of the flow of service from the service supplier to the service receiver.
The arrow from the receiver to the recipient, supplier to customer. You can create a service flow in about 2 hours that can describe almost any organization, and it might have anywhere from 25 to 40 purposes at a high level, and that's what we're showing here. And notice some of these links are pulls because they're solid, and the others are pushes because we're missing information, we're missing agreement. So the real work then, once you've got the service flow, is to help facilitate the organization and get the suppliers and customers talking with each other. And guess what they're going to talk about? They're going to use the 4 pull questions to guide them in reaching agreement on what that service will be. And the more people that do that, the more pulls you have in your service flow and the more pulls in your organization,
which is more alignment.
And that's how we're going to measure organizational alignment. Back at the beginning, we said this is the only place that you can objectively measure alignment. We're going to show you how to do that right now. It's very simple math. So in this case, here's the service flow, and there are those 2 defined pulls. Let's say we already went in and figured that out, so that's a given. And we know that there are 6 total purposes, think of the links, in this particular service flow. If we do the math, 2 divided by 6, 33%. We call that the service flow index. And the service flow index is the measurement on organizational alignment. It really represents the possibility that you can deliver ultimate service to your customers.
Before you start.
And as Ken reminds me, you can work this all out before you do anything. You can work it all out on paper. Everybody can know what to do and jump in and start doing work. Now 33% here is a pretty deceptive number. Right now, the highest number we've ever seen when we first start working with an organization is 3%. 3%. And it's not that they're bad organizations or dysfunctional, although certainly we have our share of those. But it really comes down to that lack of clarity, that lack of agreement, that lack of alignment. But very quickly, an organization can put that together. And if I was the CEO or I was the leader of a business unit, I would want to watch this metric. I'd want to know how aligned my organization is. And you know what? It's okay if it's 3%. What's better, though, is if in 30 days it's 10%. And 30 days after that, it's 30%. And using these kinds of models and the way everybody is involved in building them, because it's really a facilitated process, because of that, it's easy to make that number go up. And the organization definitely knows the difference. As that number goes up, stress goes down, performance goes up. So here's what it looks like back at the food bank. If we zoom in on this part of the service flow, we'll show you where Sky plugs right in. And now we go deeper. And here is her purpose, to secure that mobile screening site that we showed you. And now here it is. We zoomed in. And remember that poll question form where we documented her information? That poll question form lives inside of that link. The poll question form lives inside of that link. If you think of it as the service flow is like a Christmas tree, and then questions 2, 3, and 4 are like the ornaments. And the service flow helps you get the ornaments hung in the right place so that everything is aligned and all the measurements make sense. And guess what? You can take this all the way down to the level of an individual, as you saw here. But this, we could just as well be talking about a team. We could just as well be talking about a business unit. But that's how all the parts come together. So Patty, any questions at this stage of the game?
We do, but let's see. We've got, seems like the model works for mapping one service at a time. Is that correct? That's from Francine.
Yeah.
Okay, Francine, if you...
Well, if you saw that structure, there was probably 50 different purposes in that structure. And what caused that to be created was all the work that people did within the organization, not by a consultant coming in and doing a mapping type of thing. But with participation facilitated, the organization was able to put that together, all those links using the tool, and create multiple purposes and show the relationships and how they serve one another.
Now maybe this will help add to that. So think about this. Different customer polls require their own unique structure. So if I'm in a band and I'm going to play at a wedding, I'm going to gather a certain group of musicians and we're going to get together and do that gig. We will all come together in a service flow to provide music for that wedding. But the next weekend, if I'm going to be going down and doing headbanging and playing and being in a mosh pit, I think we're going to have different musicians. In fact, I know we're going to have different musicians. And that's simply an example of different customer pull requires different supporting structure. So in answer to your question, does this only show one service? I guess at the macro level, you could say it shows how a given kind of customer is served. But the deeper down you go, you see all the moving parts, each of which in reality is a service. So we're going to move on here a little bit, and we still are going to have some time for questions. In fact, we want to open this one up for questions. So we introduced the concept of pull and alignment. We explained how the 4 pull questions work. Explained that's a measurement. So what are the 2 measurements that you learned today? And if you could go ahead and use the answer box, let's see what some of the responses are that we get.
If you go ahead and type them in, I'll be your voice. So what are the 2 measurements you learned today?
Okay.
Go ahead.
See.
All right.
Looks like we're getting some answers.
There we are. Okay. Measure of success and what is actually being measured. Service flow index. Alignment. All right. All great answers.
Yep,
Measure
they
of
are.
success. All right. Thank you very much for your participation.
Great. So we talk about alignment. We know that's a measurement, right? You have it or you don't. And now you see you can take it to any different level. And the service flow index that we just talked about helps you know how that is, how aligned you are for the entire organization.
So the answer is, two measurements are the distinction between push and pull is one, and that is used to build the service flow index, which is the second measurement. So being able to measure pull and alignment, synonymous with alignment, is the first measurement. The second one is, building on that, how aligned is the organization? That would be the service flow index. Those two measures is what we're talking about.
Good. Thanks for adding that, Ken. So a couple other topics that we're just going to briefly touch on because we put them in the handout. We really shared everything that there is about this work. Well, certainly money in business is a big thing. And the way we like to think of money is in this way, that money is acknowledgement for service received. And we'd really like to think of the primary purpose of business to be to provide service acknowledged by money. And if you think about that a little bit, that's totally in alignment with your customer. Your customer wants your service and they're happy to pay you. You want to provide service and get paid for it. Works perfectly. In fact, think of a taxi cab, because that's exactly what happens. You get in the cab, let them know where you want to go, they align to your pull, they get you there, end of the ride, you say thank you, and they get paid. Now, today we're not going to spend a lot more time on this topic. The important takeaway, though, is the focus is on service. And in the case of nonprofit and government that you see on the right, it's still about service, and there still is money in the equation, because even the food bank, for example, can't do its job for free. What's different then is the funding entity is not necessarily the actual recipient of the service. And so that's what that model is about. So I want to mention that since it's on the handout. But very, very important. You can imagine if you're off focus about service and get money mixed in there, you can get way off track very fast.
So in a sense, money has a purpose. It's one of the links on the chain, and it's there to fuel the organization. And we'll show that in other examples in the workshop and so forth.
And the last comment I'll make, just as you saw us ask about alignment at the very beginning, we'll work with executive teams and have them write down their answer to this question. What's the primary purpose of business? And they'll write it down, and if they were truly aligned, you would think the one common purpose that they all have, that they'd know it and be in agreement about it. We have never had just one answer to that question. Shows you misalignment can start right at the top. We're going to move on and just look at some different ways you can apply pull thinking. If you look at it from an organization point of view, really what we're doing is helping everyone align to the pull of their customer. So you need to know who the customer is, and you need to know what their pull is. The service flow pull structure makes all these connections visible. And now instead of silos operating, people see the connection and they know how they work together. We've just seen how to measure organizational alignment. And alignment, being that foundation, is really what it takes for high performance. When we create that clarity And then you think about your vendors and suppliers, other groups that you work with to help you do your job. I think it's important that they know this so they can work more effectively with you, so they can serve you better. Now, certainly a big part of our work is in support of strategic planning. We hope you can see how questions 3 and 4, linking up with questions 1 and 2, are really all about aligning execution to strategy and answering the 4-poll questions for all those links. That's what gives you your metrics. That's what makes it all happen. Everybody has their piece. It's very easy to edit and modify, and having that be visual also allows us to go in and do some very easy analysis, and we can find many different misalignments, as well as create a monitoring plan. So it's a great foundation. Performance management is another use, and you saw what they're doing at the food bank. People's job descriptions relate to this. Sky, for example, has her business metrics, knows her accountability, can really do a better job for everybody communicating. And we talked about early on, had a question about, can this work subjectively? Absolutely. When you start talking about setting team norms, it's all subjective. We'll show you what we're doing with the City of Atlanta. And service flow is a great way to do planning. Now here's an example that Ken's going to take over and talk about some really great work that he's been doing with the council.
Yes, I began working with Atlanta City Council a few years ago. What they wanted to do is the strategic plan, and before that we did some pre-work and we went through the language, what we're showing you today with them. And they had a vision. This is still in work, it's in process right now. A strong, innovative legislative body that effectively and efficiently serves community needs and governs the City of Atlanta with clarity, integrity of service and purpose. They had 5 goals in mind, and we're going to look at one of them, communications, create more productive communication and interaction between the council and executive branch, external community, and other governmental bodies. Now, in doing the plan, these are purposes. In order to do strategy, what we did was pre-work. We had them, of course, this is question 1. We wanted to get question 2. Question 2 would be, how do we know we're successful at that? So over a period of several weeks or so, we asked the council members to compile questions that they would ask the citizens of Atlanta to know how they're being successful at creating more productive communications. So that gave us a survey. These are just a few of the questions that we ended up with. So success is that 85% of the citizens strongly agree that the council keeps the community informed regarding initiatives and issues at City Hall. So what is that? What do you see there? See, question 2 is the measure of success. 85% of the citizens strongly agree. Okay, so question 1 is the purpose, to create more productive communication. Question 2 is success is that 85%. That's the bar we're setting. Question 3 then is the survey we'll actually send out. What's missing? Question 4, right? What is the frequency? And we're going to send that out. That's in discussion. It could be monthly or quarterly, but most likely once a year or half a year. We're not ready to answer that question and get agreement. This is, like I said, in flux and still being worked on. But can you imagine doing a strategic planning without knowing this? We could have a lot of brainstorming regarding communications on question 1, but with this clarity, it created a lot different set of ideas and sub-purposes, if you will, purposes that serve this in order to create this. Each one of those measures of success will create a specific purpose or more than one purpose in order to get clarity in that. This will be reviewed with the neighborhood planning units. We have many of them across the Atlanta city. That is our customer, or a representative of our customer here in the Atlanta area. So there you see, we're using the lens of pull to know what questions to ask and get clarity on that before we actually start, before we actually get heavy into the strategic plan. And there it is on the board, and all of those questions are subjective. this goes to the answer to the previous caller who had a question about that, values. Those are all values. You can see we're working on this, so everybody involved behind the scenes, the staff, the City Council, contributing ideas, and you can see at the top across there are 5 goals, and each one of those have multiple purposes and ideas below them, and what that enabled them to do is, because we have clarity, create just the right amount of ideas and so forth, and we don't need hundreds, we need specific ideas to create that strategy. So the execution part will be determined by the actual survey as we go forward. I hope that's clear. That's a little brief example of using it in government. We're really excited about working with the City of Atlanta. In fact, they got an award this year for the first ever strategic plan here in Atlanta. So, and on we go.
You know, the council's been doing excellent work, and it's just wonderful to see, and it's very rewarding to be able to help them. Back to day 1 here, right at the beginning. So success for the day. Why you need alignment, defining alignment, how to create it, and how to see it. That's what we wanted to accomplish. Now, if that's something that fits for you and you would like to learn more, we've got an upcoming class, October 17th through 19th, and another one December 13th through 15th. At the class, we'll be getting much deeper into the methodology, give you lots of hands-on experience, very much a workshop setting. A great way to really learn and get started. And as part of the class, you'll be working on real work for you and your role. We also offer those same classes privately, and if you had a number of people you wanted to send, you likely can save money doing it that way. We have our book. It's available on Amazon. We also do consulting and coaching to help people be able to learn and apply these tools. And it's a wonderful tool set for facilitators and consultants. We also then certify people in the methodology so that they can bring it into their company or bring it into their consulting practice. So now it's time for more questions. And Patty, if you can help lead us on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. And you'll see up there, you'll see Jeff and Ken's contact information. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them. A lot of times this information spurs more questions when you're done. It was interesting, Ken and Jeff, somebody sent me a question and answer just a little while ago, and it really explains a lot. That it's a simple presentation of what needs to happen and should be easily understood, though not always implemented. So if that's what's happening in your organization and you want to learn more about this, sit down and have a conversation with Jeff and Ken, and we've got their information, their contact information up there. We want to be good stewards of your time. We've covered a lot of information, but we still have a lot of questions, great questions that people have asked. So we'll go ahead and ask them. But just a reminder, if you do have to drop off, that you're going to be requested to fill out the survey, and you'll get the free article if you fill out the survey. We're always looking to improve, and your comments will help us do that. So Ken and Jeff, are you ready for the questions?
We are, and actually we'd like to start at one that came in before the webinar even happened. Came in at 10:07 from Brian Russell in the state of Florida.
Okay. It says, I would like to hear some ideas on bringing people back to the table. One of the coalitions I serve as chair has been inactive for a couple of months. This group really needs to get energized again and get to work. Do you think we can touch that today? Well, I hope you've seen that we have that, and in addressing just that particular thing, what we usually do is bring in the leadership or the group itself and do a lunch and learn or a simple understanding of what this common language is, and then revisit the purpose of that group. People do get energized because we begin to define with them what is success and so forth to get clarity on purpose, because usually people go away from their initial purpose because they didn't have that clarity, and people had different ideas and their thoughts and so forth, and it just wasn't gelling. They weren't seemingly on the same page. So we start a new conversation. That form you saw that Jeff went through, that one form that we have, is really a really great facilitative tool to look at people and actually, what are you doing? You're looking at the same page, that one form. that it serves as a method to get people on the same page and re-energized to come back together if you have lost that energy. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, one other part to add to that, what people find, they like the alignment, the clarity, and the visibility. Being able to put a service flow up on the wall, showing what's invisible now, but how things really need to work or do work is very motivating.
And lastly, what really brings people on the same page is when you actually start to measure. You actually know how you're going, how well you're doing in real time. So the first time you measure is when we say the pull really starts. Until then, you are just talking about it. So the actual measurement is reality.
Okay. So let's take some of the questions from online, Patty, if you want to get that started,
All right,
please.
I will. And actually, I have to laugh because I'm sitting here looking at my diagram right now. So anyway, this one is from Francis, and it says, in the current economic environment, organizations want to cut costs and take shortcuts. Invariably, this compromises the fit between business objectives, targets, individual commitment, motivation, cross-business line communications, and output in functions such as production and marketing or exploration. What has been your experience influencing organizations to attend to alignment when they face economic issues?
Well, that's another good example of what I've experienced in businesses, what I call chaos. One company I worked at was a heavily unionized company, heavily meaning it was a lot of disagreement between management and the union, and it was expensive in a sense. Expensive in time, expensive in a lot of issues and personalities and performance and so forth. What brought this together was exactly what we're talking about today. Through an executive workshop, we got on the same page. We presented this to the union leadership as well. And with that common language between the executive and the leadership and the union leadership, we actually started working on the same page. So the things that didn't work before began to work under a different platform or in a different foundation. We shifted the culture to understanding how we're all related and the commonality of service-mindedness. Because we were able to measure it and have agreement on the measures, we were able to post them on the walls and so forth. And it was surprising how, first of all, what I find is this is an empowering type of education and learning and application. And that is exactly what the union leadership was looking for. And when they saw the visibility and clarity, management was a little bit nervous, but in the end, shortly after that, they understood how that all worked together. So it's through this common language that gives us this, if you will, people working on the same page. And if not, it costs you a lot of extra costs and so forth. So today's economic times, it's not that hard when you start with the foundation of common language.
Let me also point out one real quick example. I had one client that was in the outsourcing business, and they had an idea to take their core skills and move them from the industry they were in into consumer electronics. They thought, we can do outsourced fulfillment. What's the difference whether we're doing a TiVo or a magazine? It's all the same. They went to try that and discovered that it wasn't the same, and because of their internal misalignments, they had to turn down literally more than $5 million worth of business. Can you believe that? $5 million. Actually, it was more than that.
It wasn't that long.
You wouldn't believe me if I told you how much it really was.
Yeah.
So the CEO lost their job. We got brought in and just spent a couple weeks working with their team, helping everybody see the same message you're seeing today. And I remember in one case, there was an attorney that used to spend 30 days just to get out a non-disclosure agreement. And immediately after the meeting, she ran up to my client and said, we need to get together and reach agreement on how I can get those non-disclosures to you. The bottom line is within 4 months, they had added $6 million of revenue just by getting better aligned. It's amazing.
Another quick example, I'll be very quick with this, is working with the City of Atlanta. There are a lot of codes and ordinances that are made that are only answering questions 1 and the purpose. Question 2, the measure of success is often missing, as well as measurement, and that's usually left up to the courts or later on changing things and adding rules and so forth. So what we found is the council members are asking these questions during their committee meetings and so forth to get clarity ahead of time. So when we write legislation, those 4 questions are in there. I think I would invite everyone out there to look at laws and so forth. When you read the newspaper, whether it's what is a job or what is fairness, ask those questions. Define success, define the measurement, who's accountable for accomplishing that. Those are the things that we face in real life today, but through that lens, through those glasses. By the way, Jeff, remember, we're going to produce those glasses. At some point, we're going to have those on the market. All right, Patty?
Yeah, great. This is from Diane. Now, we want to be good stewards of your time. The webinar is officially over, but we still have some great questions. So if you've got the time, please stay with us. But again, if you have to sign off, please don't forget to fill out the survey.
And thank you all for your
very much
participation today, and we're happy to help support you any way we can.
Great. And now we've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
We've got one from Diana. Using the example you provided earlier, should organizations not move forward even when they don't have clarity around what success looks like? Can success be an evolving process?
I would recommend they do the best they can do with what they have. A lot of organizations are doing good work. They don't have the clarity, but they are moving forward and they are doing good work. It is a struggle and it may cost them in a lot of different ways. But one of the things we did with this other team I mentioned with the union difficulties is a small team within a large organization can do this, but they need to take care of those who don't know what you know. So in that case, we don't stop the organization from doing good work or the work they're doing, but we continue, and it's a process. One step at a time, you work it into. It's like a good virus within a company. You change the culture just a little at a time as needed with the speed that works for them. Okay.
Great. And this is a follow-up to the quantitative question earlier where the additional clarification. The second part of the question is increasing to screening sites per month. The answer to Q2, the answer to Q3 seems to be what is the number of screening sites to be increased?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
That's right. Question 3 is the actual measurement. Go out and actually measure how many sites did we increase for that month. You're right. That is question 3. That's the actual doing of it, taking the measurement. But we can say ahead of time, this is what we are going to measure. And that simply is the number of sites.
And that's helpful because if you need special assistance getting that data that you've identified, it sure helps to have that worked out.
Sometimes you're not an expert at doing the measurement, and you may need someone like your blood pressure. You ask the doctor to take the measurement. You're responsible. But that's a little more detail I want to get into today. Okay?
Right. Yep, this is from Francine. How do you make sure that the links at any one point in the chain actually help achieve the end goal? There may be agreement via the poll question form, but how do you ensure that all the links add up to the sum of the alignment?
Well, we can actually see that. We can see the form. We can ask the people. This is documented. See? And one of the things we do is make sure that the measurement we talked about, like the 2 sites, or how many sites did you increase this month, is, as you saw, there's a graph on the wall. You can see it's visible, whether it's in software within the company, or we actually like to see it physically on the wall around the office area or the person's area. But being able to document it on this one form, you don't do that every day, but you do that at least to start, and you have it in mind, and you have it somewhere placed that you've got it out, and you actually choose particular measures that you do on paper or actually measure, or others you do in your head, and so forth. That's part of what we get into, the details of that. We unpack this whole thing within the 3-day seminar.
And to further add to that question, so how do you know if you're really achieving the end goal? How do businesses do that today? They make measurements. I'm sure we've all heard the term KPIs, key performance indicators. You take what you have and hang them on the service flow where they best fit, where it's appropriate. There's a lot of that information out there now. Using this methodology, you can really focus on identifying what the KPIs need to be.
Okay, another one? Another question?
Yep. Actually, if you can, while we go to the other questions, could you go to slide 62 or 63? They'd like to see other words used for Q3.
Okay, let's go there. Okay. Jeff's going to bring it
Do
up
that
here.
while we answer more questions.
Yeah. 62. There it is. There it is.
For those of you that are looking at the survey will pop up when you log off.
So,
and notice that survey is another word for Q3.
question 3 is the measurement. Report is a measurement. Is that? We can send her that slide if she'd like, Patty.
Okay.
Get
You
her.
can do that.
We'll send
That
both
would
those
just
slides.
start.
Yeah, yeah. Or anybody
Okay.
else would like.
You can, if you would like a copy of those 2 slides, if you want to put your email address in the Q&A box, we'll make sure we get that to you after the session. We have another question. This is from Tamara. As a civilian member of the Coast Guard, I work with some truly great individuals. However, during the current modernization and economic issues we are going through, it is difficult to align our members and motivate them. I am a morale chairperson as well, and one of my favorite quotes is, "You will be surprised how powerful you can be when you infect others with your enthusiasm," by Kitty Holding. I'm still hopeful to influence others, but struggle in doing it alone. Any advice?
Well, I can tell you that before I started working with these tools, I had that same struggle with talking to management and so forth. I was the, quote, change guy within organizations as an engineer. And until I used this tool and explained and got commonality with how we speak and languages, I was not effective. I just wasn't. It was difficult. I could get some things done, but it wasn't near to the degree as I could when I used these tools. So the answer is establishing a very simple understanding between you and the people that you want to empower and to excite is using these tools so they can see what you see. They can see what we're seeing today. They can put these lenses on. And they can do that for themselves. Using these with executives on subjective measures on behavior and so forth, it allows them to see and use 360 reviews and so forth a lot more powerful because they see how that all works together with aligning to the organization. And they're getting accountability established from their own side, their own self. Really, we all don't like to be told what to do or how to do it. What this does is allow people to see it for themselves. They can fish on their own. I hope that helps the answer. Okay, is there another one?
Yeah. This is from Diana. How well does this resonate with multinational firms, or more specifically with culturally diverse workplace?
Great. You know what? We use the word service a lot today. Can you think of any other word that we wouldn't have in common is to serve? Different languages have the different names for service, but it all is service. How we help each other, how we grow through learning how to serve better. I think that establishes a commonality and brings cultures together. Culture is another name we like to refer to as the sum of the measures that you choose to act upon. Today we talked about 2 measures. If you have a multiple cultural event or multicultural organizations trying to come together, if you establish this commonality and measures, these 2 things you learned today, you have what goals regarding working together and aligning multiple cultures. Those measures in other cultures are all valid, but we're adding what we call foundational measures, which are underlying, which serves to fuel the culture of positive service-mindedness.
The other part we find the service flow being so visual really allows you to communicate a lot of information very quickly and efficiently.
As well as, because it's visible, you can acknowledge the great service received, provided, or you can acknowledge that there isn't as good a service and what support can I help you with. Without that visibility, I don't know how to help you. People often don't ask for help, but if this is visible, they don't have to ask. You'll know to help them. And that's exactly what's inside all of us, wanting to know how can we help? How can we serve? This enables you to do that.
And just one more thing on the multicultural piece. An example from one of our CDC clients. They form coalitions to achieve a certain mission in a given country. There are always different diverse partners, and they come together, and there was a lot of upset. They kept complaining how this one country wasn't making their payments. And we asked them very simply, Did they agree to make their payments? Well, guess what? No, they never said they would do it. And secondly, another group that did have an agreement wasn't paying, quote, on time. But guess what? Nobody had ever talked about when the payment would be done. Those are all important aspects that come out in question 2.
One of the things that your people experience, and I have certainly experienced it, is what I call a lot of workarounds, a lot of wanna, shoulda, couldas going on out there trying to get to the point we're talking about today. And that's why I said before, it's inside all of us to want to be aligned, if you will, want to serve. So I hope you're seeing that applying this gives you that common language so we can tap into that. And with this clarity, we can bring diverse groups together. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. If we could also go back to Q1, what is the purpose? If you can just go back to that slide while we answer the last couple of questions.
Sure. Okay. I think we have time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then while you get there, there it is.
There it is.
And while you're doing that, Diana, who's been great with all of her great questions today, should one proceed even if you can't define success at a particular point in time rather than having inertia set in?
Well, oftentimes you work with customers, they don't know what success is. And I could say, Jeff, a lot of our work has to do with, we have a lot of background with working with clients, and we know where to go get examples of service measures of success. Not knowing what success is, it's difficult to proceed. It really is. You're really guessing, and from both sides, from the service provider, from the supplier, and as well as the customer. So part of the exploration and fun is benchmark what other people do and get a menu of ideas. When we work with teams, we provide them with a menu of ideas of what is success about working together as a team and get consensus from them and their customers what is useful. So it's helping your customers understand what their own thoughts are on measures of success, what you bring to the table. And if you're clear on it, you know where to go, or people like ourselves are out there to help establish measures of success. One of the things that we've used is the internet. Just Google it. Measures of success regarding financial accounting, measures of success regarding marketing. You can do that. Today we found a lot of different places where you can find measures of success. And working with the city council, I've Googled certain phrases, and I can go to different cities and find out what they're measuring regarding legislation and so forth. Okay?
But the real key is that question 2, the measure of success, is wisdom. And when you really are a subject matter expert on something, you know what the measures of success need to be.
Or a menu that you can provide to your customers to help them clarify.
And the other part is that although the customer says they really don't know this, we find that the kind of facilitating we do to help draw the information out to fill the pull question form is very much like helping someone write a resume. They've got the information in their head, you're asking questions to help draw it out, and then putting it in a form that makes it easily understandable and very clear.
Okay. Another one?
Yep, that is it. We
Okay.
have answered all the questions, so we can just go to them for another second to see if any additional questions come in. But for those of you, we still have a lot of people online. Thank you so much for your participation today. And we hope that you enjoyed the session on Introduction to Organizational Alignment, and that you'd like to learn more by attending the class or even having some conversations to see how it would apply to your organization with Ken and Jeff. Also, we want to remind you as you sign off to take the survey. And if you found the information in today's presentation good for you and for your organization and you got a lot out of it, please pass the word on to others so that they may also benefit from these training programs. So we don't have any other questions, but Ken and Jeff, if you want to just end it all up, we can.
Well, thank you all for taking time to visit and love the questions, and let us know how we can help support you. It works.
All right, and go out there and try it on your own. See if you've got pull. Put those lenses on and ask those questions. And look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.